You're tuned in to the Bleav in Arizona podcast. Hello, Bear Down Believers, and welcome into the post-game show. We are on the court here at Footprint Center following Arizona's 57-54 loss to UCLA. Plenty to talk about from this game because it was such a frustrating finish. But once again, I'm your host, Matt Reynoldsson. Thanks so much for joining me. I know it's been a couple weeks, weird time of the year. I know for a lot of people, especially with the holidays coming around, certainly been busy in my life. But, looking to be a little more consistent with these podcasts as well. And, hopefully with that, we'll get some more consistency out of Arizona athletics because so far it's been a rough road to end 2024 after such a promising 2023 and really start to the year in 2024. Things have sort of fallen off the rails in a lot of respects. So we'll talk about that. Try not to make a mountain out of a molehill, but I know a lot of fans are frustrated right now. So I do want to echo those frustrations and really underscore what was an unacceptable result for Arizona basketball. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Wildcats falling to 4-5 on the season and all of the things surrounding this game here at Footprint Center on a Saturday afternoon. Before I do that, I want to remind you to please like and subscribe to the show over on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can check out the video versions of these on my YouTube page at Matt_Reynoldsson. All right. It was a frustrating result in part because Arizona had this game with 10:49 left in the game. The Wildcats took a 49-36 lead, and the rest of the game scored just 5 points. That included no field goals in the last 8 minutes and 43 seconds of this ball game. Fully unacceptable offensive performance, fully disjointed offensive performance, and we are trying to figure out exactly what happened to this team this year, exactly what's happened to this team at the start of the season. Watched a few games in Atlantis, obviously watched last Saturday against Southern Utah, and it feels like this team, this offense is just fighting it right now. And we saw really good spurts. We saw a little bit in the second half. We saw a little bit in the first half, but it just didn't pair as well with the defense. And we saw a little bit in the second half as well as Arizona went on a 21-6 run to start the second half, which opened up that 49-36 lead. But here they come, faltering down the stretch again, and we're left wondering, what's going on with this team? What's going on with this program? Is this a symptom of greater issues within Tommy Lloyd's program and greater issues for the 2024-25 Arizona basketball team? Can they figure this out going into Big 12 play? Because it's going to be a 20-game conference grind, and Arizona is going to need to at least go 500 or better, probably better, to get into the NCAA tournament at this point. Look, best case scenario, and I don't think this is a far stretch of a best case scenario, Arizona with wins over Samford and Central Michigan will be 6-5 going into Big 12 play, and then it's really only games left the rest of the season against the best conference in the nation. I know people don't want to hear it, but the possibility is, there is a possibility that Arizona misses the NCAA tournament, which never seemed fathomable for this program. But there's also a chance that Arizona wins the Big 12. I mean, this is a wide open league this year. I think the Wildcats can be every bit as good as a team like Kansas, who lost twice last week to Creighton and Missouri, both in blowout fashion. I think this team can be every bit as good as a talented, but maybe not arrived yet, Iowa State team. They can be every bit as good as a Baylor team that got blown out by Gonzaga in the first week of the season. This Big 12 is going to be wide open this year all year long, and they've got a few key games at home. Schedule's backloaded. You don't play Kansas till the very last game of the regular season. There's time to figure this out, but there needs to be time for soul searching at this point because Arizona did not look good in the Bahamas, did not look good today. I mean, this is an unacceptable result, and frankly, a result that played to the way that UCLA wanted to play. UCLA put Arizona in a box, put Arizona in a phone booth, made this a phone booth fight. And that's the game it turned out to be. 34 turnovers, I think, combined. You guys know, if you've watched these post-game podcasts, that I don't like to look at, I don't like to look at stats on my phone, but we did not get a paper box today. So we're going to be looking at stats on the phone for most of this as we kind of go through this. And with the mobile, it's not always the cleanest. But here's what we're looking at for turnovers: a combined total of 22 turnovers for Arizona. That's crazy. And I mean, it was spread throughout the entire roster. Jaden Bradley with 2 turnovers, Caleb Love 3 turnovers, Trey Townsend 4 turnovers, including a crucial one at the very end. Carter Bryant with 2, Tobe Awaka with 2, Anthony Del Orso with 2, Henry Vezar with 4, KJ Lewis with 3. That's 22 turnovers spread all across the roster. And UCLA wasn't that much better from a turnover standpoint. I Bleav 14 for the Bruins in this game. Yeah, it was a rough performance all the way throughout. And Arizona shooting just 6 for 18 in the second half of this game. Look, we've talked a little bit about the offensive issues for this team kind of all the way throughout as we've looked back on that Duke game, as we looked at the Wisconsin loss, in which really it was just a free throw game. The offensive performance was pretty disjointed all the way throughout. What we have seen from this offense is a lack of ability to, not just lack of ability to shoot, a lack of ability to take shots. And they clearly don't have that go-to guy right now. It's been rough sledding. And this team kind of goes as Jaden Bradley and Caleb Love go. And right now, seems like the team is just waiting for both of those guys to do something, do anything to save the overall effort, because the overall effort wasn't good enough. With 10:49 left in this game, Arizona made a basket to go up 49-36. Arizona lost this game 57-54. 5 points in the final 10:49, no field goals in almost the final 9 minutes. I have never seen a scoring drought like that. I mean, this was historic stuff today, guys. And it's so frustrating to see if you're an Arizona fan, because you know what this team, what this program is all about. You know what kind of head coach Tommy Lloyd is. You know what he brings to the table as a head coach, but he's got to figure it out right now. He's got to figure it out. He's got to call the timeouts in a better spot, not let UCLA go on a back-breaking 10-0 run, 8-0, 10-0 run to take their first lead. Sorry about that. Editing in a quick reset here because of an audio issue with my microphone that things cut out a little bit with the StreamYard here, but we're back on this and talking a little bit about the end stage of this game. I mean, Tommy Lloyd did not do a good enough job managing the game. He's a player's coach. He lets his players play. He lets his guys go. But at some point, when UCLA is on a run like that and the guys can't figure anything out on the offensive end, there's turnovers, there's poor shot selection. If they even shoot, it just turns into phone booth type of fight. And I think that's something that a veteran coach like Tommy Lloyd needs to manage the game a little bit more. Maybe needs to have a little bit of a tighter leash on this team as a whole, and maybe a looser leash on some individual players. Look, we saw Carter Bryant start this game, and Tommy Lloyd pull him early for making a mistake. And I don't know. And look, this is me sitting here doing a podcast on a court after people that are paid way more than I am to play basketball and study the game and practice and bust their butt in the gym every single day. They're the ones who are playing the game out there. So it's easy for me to take a 360-degree view, 10,000-foot view of this and sit here and criticize them. But a guy like Carter Bryant, needs to be able to work out some of the freshman issues, work out some of the kinks and everything within this offense. And I think he needs to have the leash, the room to grow within this offense. Now, I don't know what mistake he made. I don't know what mistakes, KJ Lewis has been making. I don't know what mistakes Tobe Awaka has been making. But I think that Tommy Lloyd is kind of picking and choosing when to have the long leash, and I don't think that's beneficial to these players right now. But in the end analysis, we're not talking about this being a poor coaching job. We're talking about this being a sterling defensive performance if Arizona does what it's supposed to and holds on to win with a 13-point lead with 11 minutes to go. I mean, it just was really unacceptable to see how Arizona squandered this game away. And it really felt a little bit like those games in the Bahamas, except for the fact that Arizona was playing from behind almost the whole way against Oklahoma and West Virginia, and really just ended up trickling it down their leg in both of those and again today. And things need to be figured out before the game on the 30th against TCU. Things need to be figured out like that, because this game, this team, this program right now is in a spot that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in fans, and they brought a lot of fans to Footprint Center today. Like, this was a good fan base here. They were juiced up. They were ready for this historic rivalry. They were ready for the two best Pac-12 programs in the history of the Pac-12 to be playing their first non-conference game. This was made for this kind of stage in an NBA arena, and UCLA turned it into a phone booth fight, and Arizona wilted under that pressure. We saw it in March last year against Clemson. We've seen it with other physical teams over the years when teams try to do that to Arizona. And usually the Wildcats have an answer in the form of a go-to scorer, in the form of a go-to good offensive player. This year they don't seem to have that. Caleb Love looks like a shell of himself, and this team needs to figure some things out very quickly. Look, I asked Tommy Lloyd straight up after the game, you have to value offensive possessions, and it's clear they do. It's clear they don't want to turn the ball over. It's clear they're trying to run sets and things like that. Maybe not set plays, but, within the motion offense. But at some point, you got to take a step back and look at the fact that they scored 5 points in the last 10:49. Here's what Tommy Lloyd had to say.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, it's really hard to win, and we had a good flow go there for a little bit, and things just kind of unraveled a little bit. Obviously, with Big Mo, not playing, we kind of are figuring out on the fly how this team's going to look going forward, and trying to tweak some things, maybe to see if this team has some other strengths. So I just didn't feel like we had a great. Maybe and not the players' fault, but I just think we have a great understanding of how we wanted to attack and play today in pressure situations. I think obviously we got to continue to work on that and then build that certainty and that identity within the guys. Now that it looks like Mo is going to be out for a little bit.
And look, the answer is they've got to find answers after 0 field goals in the last 8:46 of this game. That, frankly, is not acceptable. And I think a lot of Arizona fans watched today, either at home or left Footprint Center today, so frustrated and so confused on the direction of this team, where it's at. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but this team seems so much less apt to assist the ball, to get to the basket, to really try and work on finding open threes, finding things. It just feels like this offense is fighting it so much right now. And Mick Cronin put it well after the game. It's not, necessarily who has the best players. It's who gels in this new era of college basketball. And right now, with the transfers it has, I think they're good players. I think Trey Townsend, Tobe Awaka, and Anthony Del Orso are good players, but there just does not seem to be a mesh on this roster right now. It does not seem like Caleb Love is confident in what he's doing. It doesn't seem like Jaden Bradley has stepped into the starting point guard role with a lot of efficiency, I would say. And the assist numbers are down for Arizona. Like, let's take a look at the overall assist numbers in this game. Arizona had 11 for the game. And I know that's pretty typical when you have only 54 points and only 19 made baskets in the entire game. But 11 assists is about half of what they should be at. Look, the Wildcats for a lot of last year were a top 5 assisting team in the entire country. They would routinely get 21, 22, 21, 22 assists in a game. And as much as we came into this year being like, okay, Jaden Bradley's going to be a better option at point guard than Kylan Boswell. Okay, better culture fit for the program, everything like that. Better defender. He is a better defender, by the way. But you look at it and you say, you know what, Kylan Boswell may be a bit of an absence right now because there's nobody on this team that's shooting the way he did when he was lights out. We saw some incredible Kylan Boswell runs last year. And yeah, we saw a little bit from Jaden Bradley in March, but I was talking to people at March Madness in LA, other media members from Alabama, and they said they were worried when he was at Alabama, some of his consistency issues were really coming to light. And I think we've seen that so far in his first year as a full-time starter at Arizona. So he's been inconsistent. Caleb Love has obviously been disastrously inconsistent. Tonight, just 9 points in this game, 7 points in this game on 3 of 10 shooting and 1 of 7 from 3. I like the guy. I like the guy a lot. Caleb's a great interview, humble, team first guy. But at some point, 1 for 7 from 3 is sort of becoming your classic Caleb Love line, becoming your expected Caleb Love stat line. And that's what it's turning into, which is so frustrating to see. But I think the bigger issue here is the fact that they had almost a 1-2. No, I think it was directly a 1-2. Let me double check this. Yeah. Arizona's assist to turnover ratio in this game was 1-2. And that really has not been that has been, I believe, a reflection of the entire season for the Wildcats. 11 assists to 22 turnovers. Arizona does not value the ball, does not take care of the ball, and does not have anybody who can hurt you on offense. You'll see stretches of great defensive play, and then you'll see stretches of not rotating well enough and guarding the three. Or you'll see stretches of them not being able to defend things inside, because when they bring a guard down to what we call broiling on a post player or on a forward on the inside, then you leave a three-point shooter open, and more times than not, the teams against Arizona are going to hit those corner threes. We've seen them year after year after year after year. UCLA hit a few of those early, did not hit very many of those late, but it was just death by 1,000 paper cuts, and Arizona watched it all fall apart. UCLA is a good defensive team. That's what Mick Cronin has built this program into being. Mick Cronin gave Arizona a lot of credit for how they played defense. But I think the bigger thing is that UCLA made the stops when it needed to, and Arizona did not make the stops when it needed to. And that, I think, is frustrating. But I also think, it does come down to assists and turnovers being two sides of the same coin. So I asked Jaden Bradley, how you continue to be aggressive with those passes, continue to look for assists when you're playing a team with active ball denial and active hands like UCLA. So both Jaden and Tommy Lloyd answered this question.
Yeah, they do a great job, spinning you up and making you make decisions. And I feel like for this game, we took some, bad decisions, but at some point we went on a little run and you made some great decisions. So he's got to look at the film and clean it up.
They're just really handsy. They're handsy and they're good in the gaps. A lot of them were, you're throwing to the guy a ball in a tight window and they're attacking the ball, and obviously they're good at it. So they do a good job of swarming to the ball and making you play in uncomfortable tight spaces.
So I think this one fits is especially frustrating for a lot of Arizona fans as well, because it's UCLA. I mean, this historic Pac-12 rivalry coming into this building in a very pro-Arizona crowd. I think even in LA to some extent, and definitely in Vegas, you will also have a pro-Arizona crowd for the Wildcats and the Bruins. I mean, this is the West was built on this college basketball rivalry. It is so quintessential to this area, to the history of college basketball overall, with the great success over year during the Pac-12 era significantly. I think this has become one of those great rivalries. But I think it looks better at 90-86 than it does at 57-54. I mean, this was not a pretty ball game. 36 turnovers, I believe, between these two teams. Poor shooting performances by both. A game of runs, but really just a game of spurts and stuttering offenses that couldn't figure out anything except for get the ball inside and try and go to work and try and draw some fouls. A lot of fouls drawn in this game. Neither team shot free throws exceptionally well. Let me double check that because I don't want to get that wrong. Let me double check here on my full game box score because I don't want to get that wrong for Arizona. 14 for 19 isn't terrible, but 7 for 16 for UCLA. That is as bad as you can get from the free throw line. And Arizona did not take advantage of that. If UCLA is under 50% from the charity stripe, you should put those guys on the line almost every time. And Arizona didn't. And it was a poorly managed game. And I don't need me to put that all on Tommy Lloyd's shoulders, although it does come down on him as the head coach. I think it needs to come down on these players as well, because the guys have not stepped up, have not taken that refuse to lose alpha mentality. And being up 13 and not even losing the game on a spurt, not even losing the game on a run, but just slowly trickling it down your leg and just losing grip of the game, losing control of the game slowly, possession after possession after possession. When your defense isn't playing poorly, it was just the offense. You could see the confidence slipping away from their eyes, and it was just tough to watch. I mean, Arizona fans, you know this. This is not characteristic. This is tough to watch right now. And this hopefully isn't the team we're going to see in March, but at this point, it comes into question whether this team is even going to see March. Who knows? Because they got to get a lot better. They've got to get a lot better. And they've got to get a lot better before Big 12 play as well. December 30th, TCU. Look, TCU is not going to be a slouch, but certainly going to be one of the easier Big 12 games you have this year. But you have the likes of Iowa State, Houston, Cincinnati, Kansas, Baylor on the schedule this year. You need to figure things out quicker than you're figuring them out right now, because Arizona's 4-5 on the year, not even sniffing the top 25. Putrid performance in the Bahamas. A lifeless performance against Duke, giving up 42 to a career average player in AJ Storr. I mean, this is these guys, they couldn't figure it out. Sorry, not AJ Storr. It was a different player for Wisconsin. Regardless, I digress. These players need to figure it out. This team needs to figure it out. This coaching staff needs to figure it out. Here's Tommy Lloyd's overall thoughts right now on why Arizona is fighting it so much.
Yeah, we're battling. It's not coming easy. We're not gonna act like everything's going great and we're expecting everything just flow together naturally. We're gonna have to fight for it. This group's gonna have to fight. For one, you're dealing with some adversity, and where's our confidence at, and do we have our certainties kind of in our back pocket? We're going to have to keep fighting for that and kind of establish that. Sometimes it's not far off. I thought, that second half we built, I don't know, what, a 10, 11, 12-point lead, something like that. I thought it felt pretty good. It felt like, how we wanted to feel. And, I looked up at the clock and knew there was a lot of time left, and I'm like, hoping we can make another little run. And so maybe we have a little more of a buffer to sustain a comeback from them. But, it wasn't in the cards today. And, I'm sure I'm going to go back and look at that thing, and there's going to be some coaching miscues. There's going to be some situations I wish the players were just a little bit tougher. But all in all, I think the most important thing is, and I know this is a cliche, but we got to hang together.
Check that during that Tommy Lloyd soundbite. John Tonji was the one who went for 42 points against Nebraska, or against Arizona. Wisconsin's John Tonji. He's from Omaha, Nebraska, which is what confused me on that. But I digress. I mean, Arizona is really fighting it right now from an offensive standpoint. From a defensive standpoint, it just doesn't feel like there is a lot of cohesion. I mean, it feels like Arizona's getting a lot of good defensive stops, but they're not leading to transition, and teams are doing their best to avoid Arizona being able to capitalize in transition. It did in the second half on a 10-0 run in which it made 4 straight dunks. But again, this team is not scaring anybody from a shooting perspective. And one of the only guys that can scare somebody from a shooting perspective is Anthony Del Orzo, and he's on the bench because he has not proven to be a reliable defensive player. So where does that lead you? Where do you look for answers? Maybe you look to the freshman. Maybe it's Carter Bryant. Maybe Carter Bryant is the answer because he's a strong defender, obviously rangy, big athlete, impressive guy, super capable on the offensive end, can knock down the three, can get to the rim, can, pull up, can dunk over people, everything like that. Maybe the one X factor for this team turning things around from this kind of quicksand pit right now could be Carter Bryant. So we'll see. We'll see if Tommy Lloyd takes that upon himself to give Carter Bryant more opportunities outside of just starting him, but give him more opportunities when he makes mistakes, because that's the way the Wildcats need to go about this. Need to look at how they're assessing their own roster. Look, the roster assessment needs to come, and it needs to come quickly. Tommy Lloyd announcing after the game they don't have an official diagnosis yet on Mo Krivas. He did injure the same foot in practice this week that he was injured with in the preseason. And here's the real key part. Lloyd did not rule out Krivas being out for the rest of the season. So that would mean the Wildcats would be going with Tobe Awaka and Henry Vesar at that post level. And I think if you're missing Mo, you're missing a lot right there, because he's a guy with good ball skills that can get to the rim, that can pass well from underneath. And I think he has a little bit better front court passing ability than guys like Awaka and Vesar, excuse me. So this is a soul searching loss. I don't mean to overstate that, but it really is a soul-searching loss. And I think Arizona's had a couple of those early on in the season. Look, beating up on the Cream Puffs of Cream Puff Land in the first 2 games, and then going on the road and getting humbled by a Wisconsin team that dropped over 100 points on you, getting absolutely smothered defensively by Duke. And then that defensive smothering has sort of carried over into what we saw in the Bahamas, and then certainly what we saw today. You knew the game plan that UCLA was going to come in with. That's probably the most disheartening part. You knew the game plan that UCLA was going to come in with. They were going to try and out-physical Arizona. They were going to try and rough them up. They were going to try and make Arizona uncomfortable. And perhaps the most frustrating part of all of this was Arizona solved it and then reverted right back to what the issues were. The Wildcats solved it in the second half, a 21-6 spurt to start the second half in the first 10 minutes. Like, that is Wildcat basketball. And the arena was on fire. Everybody was up. We could barely see from the press decks because everybody was up and cheering and loud and into it and so excited about this game, so excited about this team finally turning it around. And you're feeling good because you're going to go in 7-4 to Big 12 play, and the margin for error is a little bit better because UCLA looks like already one of the top teams in the Big 10 conference this year and what should be a fairly weak year for the Big 10 conference. And now, because you score 5 points in 10:49, now it's up in the air. Now the tournament hopes are up in the air. This would have been a good neutral site win for the Wildcats when it comes to the net rating, when it comes to the overall resume for a tournament team. But instead, what do you have on your resume right now? You have wins over Canisius, Old Dominion, Davidson, and Southern Utah. And if you finish non-conference 6-5, then you have wins over Samford and Central Michigan. Not a power conference school in that boat. The Wildcats squandered every single non-conference opportunity it had. And now, this isn't like last year. This isn't like other years where you have to load up on the non-conference and win those non-conference games because you're dealing with a weak Pac-12 and you really got to build up that resume early on. So then you can just kind of coast through conference play and lose focus through February and then, try and turn it around by March. You win a conference title. You get upset on the first or second weekend of March Madness. Rinse, repeat, do it all over again. So maybe this is where it all turns around. Maybe this is where things get better in February because they were horrible in November and December. But there's no sugarcoating the fact that they have been horrible in November and December. This is the worst early season non-conference stretch we've seen under Tommy Lloyd. Worst one for a long time for the Arizona Wildcats. This is not the standard of this program. This is not what, we as media expect to see. This is certainly not what you as fans expect to see. It's a rough go of it. So Arizona needs to figure out what it wants to be identity-wise as a team, as a program. Can the Wildcats win for the first time seemingly in program history on defense alone? Because right now it seems like that's the only way things are going to go. But you know what teams win by defense? It's not to bring up ghosts of the past, Wildcat fans, but those 2014 and 2015 Wisconsin teams that beat the Wildcats in the Elite Eight, those were teams that thrived on those Bo Ryan defenses and hit threes. Arizona can't shoot right now. If Arizona could hit threes, different story. Dangerous team. But right now, Arizona can't shoot. It does not have a number one option, does not have a go-to scorer, does not have an alpha, and clearly has a mental block to where it can't get past its own issues. It can't get over itself when it's in a tight game. It's 3 straight losses in extremely tight games for the Wildcats. Oklahoma, West Virginia, now UCLA. And they lost to every power conference team. I hate to keep underscoring it because this sucks to hear, but they lost to every power conference team in their non-conference schedule. So yeah, at best at this point, 6-5 coming out of non-conference play. But when you look at what this team needs to do in Big 12 play, it's a long hill to climb, and they've got to stay healthy. Who knows when Krivas is going to be back, especially after this injury. That's a tough injury to overcome. So who knows when he's going to be back? Who knows when this team is going to gel together? Who knows if this team is going to gel together in time to get enough resume-building tournament wins? It's one thing if you knock off a top 10 team on the road in January. It's another thing doing it 2 or 3 times to, get the stink of an awful non-conference, off the brain of the committee. Because this is looking more and more, unfortunately, like it's going to come down to a decision by the selection committee of whether Arizona deserves to have the opportunity to go win some games in March Madness. I don't know when the last Arizona NIT is. I don't want to look it up. I don't want to look it up because I don't want to think about a Wildcats NIT right now. This team, this program, these athletes, these coaches, they're better than that. And it needs to be better than that. But right now, it's hard not to feel sort of doomsday about the Arizona Wildcats because the transfers aren't working out that well. The returners have regressed, especially Love, Lewis, Bradley. And your starting center's hurt. Your backup center's chucking up threes with 2 minutes left in the game that may or may not have been good decisions. And your best player, perhaps, is a guy that has a short leash in Carter Bryant as the 5-star freshman works to figure out the flow of college basketball. It's not good right now. It's not good. There's so much that's not good. But, the ever optimist that I am, you guys know me at this point. The ever optimist that I'm confident that Arizona was going to find a way to figure it out. But we'll do a check-in for a month from now. I mean, January 14th, let's check in on January 14th where the Wildcats are at that point. Because if this is still a team floating around 500, it's a long hill to climb to make the tournament at that point, especially if you're under 500. If you're under 500 a month from now, I mean, maybe start sending out, hey, please let us in letters to the NIT, which is yikes. I've seen a lot of great programs have down years. I don't think this is that kind of year for Arizona. I think Arizona is too well coached to be that. I think the players in their essence and in their mindset are unselfish enough to where this still has the ability to turn around, but they've got to figure out the basketball sense. And they've got to figure out a lot of things that they figured out on that Israel trip last year. Who was going to be the leading scorer, who was going to be the rebounder guy inside, who was going to be, your glue guy, your enforcer, your need a 3-ball, your lockdown defender. Everything like that was sort of figured out in an off-season trip last year to Israel, and sort of hasn't been figured out this year. Looks like they've been sort of swimming in it for a month and maybe gotten too big for their britches after wins over Canisius and Old Dominion to start things off, especially after that 50-plus point win. I think it was a 59-point win over Old Dominion. So that's pretty easy to, start feeling pretty good about yourself. And obviously they didn't feel very good about themselves after Wisconsin. But the Duke loss was humbling, and the Duke loss provided a blueprint for other teams to find a way to beat Arizona. And they certainly have done that right now. So here we are, 16 days away from Big 12 play. Arizona needs to figure it out this week. Try and get wins over Samford coming into McHale, and then Central Michigan coming into McHale before the Christmas moratorium takes them off the court for a few days. It starts with TCU. It starts with TCU on December 30th, and that 20-game league schedule is going to be an absolute grind. It's going to be a bear. These guys have to stay healthy. They have to stay positive. They have to stay together. I think they will. I think this is a team. I think this is a coaching staff that's pretty well put together, but at some point they have to figure out how to turn the basketball thing around, because right now the basketball thing is looking like a 57-54 loss to UCLA and what was basically a home crowd here in Phoenix. Frustrating. Recapping this, and I know it sucks to hear, but one more time, just recapping this, a 57-54 loss by the Arizona Wildcats in which they went the final 10:49 of the game, scoring just 5 points, and the final 8:46 of the game without a field goal. So frustrating if you're an Arizona Wildcats fan. But the good news is you don't have to wait very long to get that taste out of your mouth. Samford later this week coming into McHale, good mid-major, so certainly no slouch there. And it's had its share of March moments. Almost knocked off Kansas last year in the tournament. But if Arizona gets a win there, it'll calm the waters a little bit, get a win against Central Michigan, and then really, really lock in that focus to Big 12 play, because this entire team's fate will be decided in the Big 12 conference. That'll do it for me here at Footprint Center in downtown Phoenix. Once again, your final score, 24th ranked UCLA beating Arizona 57-54. We'll have some more content coming up later this week. I do want to talk about Arizona football's new offensive coordinator, Seth Dagey. Also give kind of a good offseason check on the football program with the mass exodus of transfer portal players. See if there's maybe a little bit more positivity that can come from a year 2 under Brent Brennan. Maybe things turn around, and maybe they get a bunch of new players to really sort of wash the stink of a 4-8 season clean and start fresh. And when you still have your leader like Noah Fafita, I think that's something they can do really well. So we'll talk about that at some point later this week. Would love to get a podcast up before I head, back home to the Midwest for my Christmas holiday. But hope you guys continue to have a great rest of your weekend. Don't let this one sour the rest of your weekend. It's a very, very long season, and we are in month 2 of what ends up being a season that spans 6 months of the calendar between October and April, between the end of October and early April. So it spans a little pieces of 6 months of the calendar, which is crazy to think about. But only less than 2 months in. Arizona has room to improve. They have room to get better, but it'll all come in Big 12 play, and the standard they need to be held to. They know the standard they need to be held to, but the standard comes when they play those great teams in the Big 12 conference. So plenty of time to figure it out, but chop chop, better figure it out pretty quickly. I'll be watching them do that. I hope you will too. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Bleav in Arizona podcast. One more time, make sure to like and subscribe to the show over on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as please subscribe to my YouTube page at Matt_Reynoldson. Hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Enjoy the weekend, enjoy the weather, and bear down.